This is the skull of an alligator snapping turtle, right? So
Yes,
the head, you can kind of see it's...
This week on Kentucky Afield, we went live on Facebook to answer all of your Kentucky Wild questions, and we're bringing you those answers right now. It's all next on Kentucky Afield.
Just a pretty fish.
Beautiful.
This pond is plumb loaded with frogs.
They're everywhere in here. Yeah, this is a good fish right here. Really good fish.
Come here, girl.
Yeah, boy. That's a big rabbit.
Nice job.
Yes!
Yes! My first muskie.
Mercy, Leo.
Yeah, look at it. It's a keeper.
Here it goes. Boom.
Wow, that happened fast.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm your host, Chad Miles. Thank you for joining us tonight for our annual Kentucky Wild Question and Answer Show. So this is the show that we talk about all the species of animals we have here in the state of Kentucky that we don't hunt, fish, or trap. So we're brought to you here by Kentucky Wild. You can see everyone's wearing their Kentucky Wild gear. What is Kentucky Wild? We've had it around here in the state of Kentucky for quite a few years. We've actually funded several projects, one of them that we were actually in the field working on yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about that. Michaela, tell me a little bit about what is Kentucky Wild?
Yeah, so Kentucky Wild is a program for all of the species that we're actually going to be talking about tonight. Things like songbirds, butterflies, some of our frogs, snakes, salamanders, freshwater mussels, anything that we manage in the department that is not part of the species that are hunted, fished, or trapped. So those species kind of have their own funding source for where people can buy licenses and the funding goes to those species. There was never previously a way specifically to support, other than buying hunting and fishing licenses, but to have another way to support some of the other work that the department's doing with all of the kind of species that make up the wildlife diversity program. So Kentucky Wild funds, it's a membership-based program, so any individual person can become a member of Kentucky Wild. And when you do that, the funding from your membership, there's kind of different tier levels of memberships. The funding from your membership goes directly to support the species that we're going to be talking about tonight. And there's also different things. So when you become a member, there's things like these t-shirts, some of the hats and stuff that we'll be talking about. But you can also get involved in experiences. So we have some member experiences going on throughout the year for Kentucky Wild that members can actually sign up to come join us in the field and see a little bit of the work that we do in person.
All right, thanks, Michaela. And we also have a promo that we'll talk about a little bit. If you want to be a member of Kentucky Wild, right now is a great time to do it. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we met Michaela. Let's meet our other panel guests here. We have our expert. So we have state herpetologist John Mcgregor. Thank you, John, for coming tonight.
Oh, anytime.
We met Michaela Rogers, who is a wildlife biologist. And we also have Michael Patton, who is our avian biologist. So if you want to be a member of Kentucky Wild, if you go to fw.ky.gov/KY Wild, there's a place there that you can go and do an annual membership. They're normally $50. Right now, they're on there as a promotion for $35. And what you get for that is a membership as well as this t-shirt that Michaela is wearing here, this red Kentucky Wild t-shirt. You can also get that. There's also a place on there to buy other merchandise and gear for Kentucky Wild. These country boy hats have been super popular. I get asked all the time, where do you get one of these? Well, this is how you do it. They're only on there for a limited amount of time. We only get a certain amount of these. And if you want one of these hats, you go there to fw.ky.gov/KY Wild, and you can also purchase one of these Country Boy Brewing hats. They're available right now, so if you want one, you better get it pretty quickly. All right, we've already got questions coming in. Let's get started. Our first question here is from John Collins, and he wants to know how common alligator snapping turtles are in Kentucky. Wants to know, are there any modern records of alligator snapping turtles here in Kentucky? Alligator snapping turtles.
Alligator snapping turtles are really rare in Kentucky. Now, I get a lot of people that think they found them, and they find young common snapping turtles which have 3 ridges like an alligator snapper, but we only have 13 records of alligator snapping turtles ever in the state.
So a regular snapping turtle, they can get pretty big. So people may confuse them based on size alone, but how big, what is a big record for a normal snapping turtle and then an alligator snapping
A
turtle?
really big normal snapping turtle might be 20 pounds.
Okay.
I think the largest one ever caught in the state was over 60 pounds.
Okay,
And it
okay.
was in a pond and a horse farm in Woodford County, and it was biting the noses of the horses.
Oh,
But-
wow.
But an alligator snapper reaches 100 pounds or more. They are big turtles. You can recognize them by they have a big overhung beak. When they open their mouth, they have this little pink worm on the end of their tongue. A regular snapper has a tongue just like a human.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real thick tongue. But other than that, it's pretty technical trying to identify them. But
If you
send
want
a
to see
picture
it,
if you're not sure, and I'll tell you.
if you want to see an alligator snapping turtle, do we have one here at the Salado Wildlife Education Center?
Yeah, actually, we do.
Okay.
We have one that started out in my basement, and it kind of outgrew two aquariums, and now it lives here at the Salado
Okay,
Center.
so if you want to see one, it's a good place to come. To give you an idea, I'm not going to try to pick this up because it is huge. This is the skull of an alligator snapping turtle, right? So
Yes, yes.
the head, you can kind of see it's bigger than my hand.
It's huge.
These things get massive. You say over 100 pounds, it's pretty easy to see how they get that size. You start looking at the skull of that thing.
Yeah.
So they're very, very, very big.
And
long-lived
we have
species.
never found a juvenile alligator snapping turtle in
Oh, really?
Kentucky, so we don't know that we even have them reproducing here.
Oh, wow, okay. Next question is from David Apate from Instagram. How are the monarch butterflies doing here in Kentucky? Michaela, you actually work with the monarch butterflies quite frequently. Tell us a little bit about how they're doing here in Kentucky.
I do, yeah. So the monarch butterflies, you probably started seeing them around. It's kind of that time of year that they're starting their fall migration. And it's really hard to get a good census on exactly how monarchs are doing kind of individually in Kentucky. Last year, just, having people, like we have different people that help us go out and look for monarchs, tag monarchs. And last year seemed to be a little bit of a lower year. This year they've started to kind of come back, and we're starting to see higher numbers, but the numbers in Kentucky don't always reflect the overall population. So this past year, there were 2.84 hectares of monarch butterflies overwintering in Mexico, and so that would have been kind of last year's fall population.
Okay.
And then the year before, we had 2.10, so it kind of went down, or it was down a little bit and then it went up, and that was kind of what last year seemed like a little bit lower of a year in Kentucky. So even though kind of the numbers will look different in the state, we'll look at those overwintering numbers and they may look a little bit different because that's how you get the larger picture.
We talked about tagging a monarch butterfly.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, we've had monarch butterflies found out of the country. They were tagged
Yes.
here in Kentucky, which I think is just fascinating. A monarch butterfly, the tag. What would a tag look like if you actually found a butterfly? What would it look like?
Yeah, so I actually brought one here so we can see. It's a little round sticker.
Okay.
And on each individual sticker, there's a unique tag number. And so it used to be a 6-digit tag. Now it's a 7-digit tag because this has been such a successful program that it's been going on for over 20 years. And so they've now had to add more numbers to the tag just so that we can...
So if it looks like a piece of trash that's got stuck on this butterfly,
Yeah.
don't try to remove it. You will
Yeah.
kill the butterfly. Leave it alone, because that is actually how we're studying, how the survival rate and how they're moving.
And even further, if you can get a picture of the tag, or you can look at the tag and get the number and report that tag to either me or the department or someone at monarchwatch.org, that's who runs the national tagging program that we participate in. That is really important information for us to know about, because that allows us to learn about where these monarchs are originating that could possibly be going all the way to Mexico, kind of what areas are most important in our states, or where monarchs are stopping in Kentucky from other states on their migration south.
Fantastic. Well, thank
Yeah.
you. All right, next question is from Nick Ward on Instagram. He wants to know how he can attract more birds to his house outside of a bird feeder. So, perfect. We have our avian biologist right here. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So he doesn't say what type of species of birds. What type of birds do people try to attract to their house outside of a bird feeder? What would they want to see?
So outside of anything that's going to go to a bird feeder, you're probably going to be looking at more of like insect-eating birds. So things like warblers that will breed here, or else just kind of coming through when they're migrating towards South America or Central America. And the best way to attract like that kind of bird is going to be, having habitat that encourages insects to be in your yard. So that could be planting native plants, native trees, having cover for those insects, especially overwintering insects. They'll get in those, they look dead to us, but the native plants that are just dormant underground, they'll kind of hibernate in those, and then the birds will come and forage, in the wintertime when there might be seed out for them, but they'll also eat those insects.
Okay. So, what type of birds? Warblers, obviously, you want those around there. But if you want birds around your house for photography, what type of birds are people really interested in having around their house? Warblers. I know people always do hummingbirds.
Yes, yes.
I see bluebird feeders. What other type of birds?
Well, people if you're talking about bird feeders, like people love to see cardinals come to their bird feeders.
Okay.
We often hear people come and saying they've been looking at the same cardinal year after year.
Yeah.
People often will have house finches on their feeders. A lot of different types of sparrows be known to come to feeders as well, especially during the wintertime, where there's not that food abundant once all of the natural food sources have kind of gone away for the year. Those feeders become really nice for our wintering birds, like our white-throated sparrows and our white-crowned sparrows, which are only our winter residents, and they're kind of reliant on those feeders if they come to your yard.
Yeah, it's great. It's fascinating. I love this show because we get on here and we talk about all the birds that people want to attract, and then we'll get questions on 2 or 3 birds that people want to keep away from your house, or how do they keep them out? And then it's one of those questions where everybody has a different level of fascination with wildlife, and we get to talk about that today. And obviously, we have a panel of experts here that made it their life's work to be in and around and study different animal species. So we'll get a question in a minute on how to keep them away. So just,
I'm ready.
keep yourself ready, because that question will be coming. All right, next question here is from Kate Lloyd from Facebook. When is the peak season for monarch butterflies to be laying eggs in Kentucky? I'm not seeing any in their backyard milkweed plants yet. So this is a person who's actively attracting butterflies, and they want to know about laying eggs for monarch butterflies.
Okay, yeah, so monarchs can, of course, be laying eggs. We have several generations that come through really once they get here in May to whenever the migration is starting, kind of the end of this month. We can have egg-laying monarchs all the way through then. The peak season is really going to be kind of right now. So we're in August right now, so any of the eggs that are laid right now are going to be part of that 4th generation that migrates to Mexico. So if you're not seeing monarch butterflies on your milkweed plants right now, there's still a chance they could still be laying eggs into September, especially because we've had some pretty mild falls, or kind of falls that have not gotten cold until a little bit later. I've seen eggs, in September. I've seen caterpillars one year in early October. And so a lot of it is, a little bit weather dependent, kind of how much the fall comes in and how much, things get colder. But really that peak season is kind of August, end of July, where monarch butterflies are laying eggs that are going to be part of that migratory generation, because we of course want a large migratory generation, because all of the monarchs have to make it through a lot of different obstacles during their migration.
Okay. So if you're not seeing them, it's not too late. It still may happen.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on that
keep
milkweed.
checking the milkweed.
All right, next question, Craig Banks from Facebook. How are snakes and spiders doing in eastern Kentucky with all the flooding that happened? This is someone who, I think he wants to know that they're doing well, I hope. But snakes and spiders wants to know about how that's doing, and now that the water is down and the humid conditioning are bringing more of them out. So how does the humidity and the water, how's that handled?
The snakes deal with the flooding pretty well. They just kind of move up the hill.
Yeah.
And then they'll move back down again. And if they get washed downstream, that's okay.
Yeah.
Spiders is a little bit different because they are really specific in their habitats. So the flooding has probably impacted the spider population pretty hard in eastern Kentucky, but hey, they lay a lot of eggs. It doesn't take many spiders to bring them back. So I would say the snakes are probably faring better than the spiders.
Okay.
People don't want to hear that, of course.
Yeah.
Hey.
Kara Couch, how can I get more bats around my property? So this is someone who wants to see more bats around their property. What type of bats would a person be seeing around their property, and how can they attract more bats?
Well,
both of you guys, I know, deal with bats or some.
Yeah, I
Go
can
ahead.
answer this one. So the most common bat species that you're going to see around your house is usually going to be a big brown bat.
Okay.
You'll kind of see them easiest if you're looking up around dusk, around sunset, whenever if you have like street lights, that sort of thing. They might be flying around because they're insect eaters, so they're going to be going around those street lights that, you know, insects are attracted to. They're going to want to eat those insects. You can also see red bats. Those are going to be, you know, especially if you're in an urban area, big brown bats, red bats. Those are kind of some of our most common species that you're going to see. As far as attracting bats to your house, of course, a lot of people want bats, you know, around their house, but not inside their house. So just having, as much as possible, planting, you know, native plants that insects, you know, a diversity of native plants that insects are attracted to, that's going to bring your bats in, because then the bats have plenty of food to eat. So they're looking for all those insects. Also a water source. I don't know that they really use like smaller like bird bats, that sort of thing very much, but if you have a pond or something like that, they will use people's swimming pools for better or for worse. But if you do have a swimming pool, getting one of those little float things that with a ramp that if a bat or a frog or something like that gets in, and they can kind of get up out of the swimming pool, that sort of thing. But yeah, by and large, native plants is going to be the best way to attract things.
Okay. All right. Jeff Coulter wants to know about black vultures. Black vultures. He wants to know if they're protected in Kentucky. Now, black vultures, there's several different several different vulture species here in Kentucky. Tell me a little bit about the species of vultures we have, how you tell them apart, and then let's talk specifically about black vultures, if they're protected.
Sure. So there's two species of vultures in Kentucky. There's the black vulture and there's the turkey vulture.
Okay.
Turkey vultures are the vultures you're going to see that have the red heads, the pinkish heads. Black vultures have black heads. If you ever see them flying pretty high up, turkey vultures are going to have along their wing kind of a white strip along the whole wing, and then black vultures kind of have like silver hands. You look at them when they're soaring.
Okay.
As far as, repeat the question one more time.
Turkey vultures. Tell me a little bit about turkey vultures, and then are they protected?
Protection, yes. So both turkey vultures and black vultures are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So that protects all native birds in Kentucky throughout the whole entire United States as well. It makes it so you can't, you know, just go out and shoot a bird if it's, you know, you don't want it around your house or something like that. It protects their eggs as well, and it actually makes it so you can't actually collect their feathers. So they're federally protected. Both species are.
You know, vultures kind of get a little bit of a bad rap, and I know people, some people, especially with cattle, they've had problems with vultures, and people have had problems with black vultures. That I've heard people talk about them getting on their roof and pecking at tar and doing some weird things like that. But I will tell you, just 2 weeks ago, I've been smelling a lot of skunks. I guess it's skunk mating season potentially, or possibly. I was smelling skunks, and a skunk got hit in my front yard, and I was gone for the next day. I saw those vultures, not black vultures, but vultures, and it went from unbearable, you couldn't be in the front yard, to completely cleaned up. I literally mowed over that spot 3 or 4 days later and could barely smell it.
Yeah, they do you quite a service.
Thank goodness for vultures. It literally was running me out of my front yard to cleaned up. I mean, think about what this would be like, what it would be like around here with the number of animals that hit on the highways and animals that die without vultures. So, they kind of get a bad rap. Thank God we got them, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question here is from David Spalding. Are whippoorwill numbers falling? I haven't heard one in several years. We get this every year at this show. Who wants to talk a little bit about whippoorwills?
So whippoorwills, you know, throughout their entire range are declining. And in Kentucky, we're especially looking at after that. We have a survey that we do every year just to kind of keep track of their numbers. Whippoorwills, they really like kind of forested habitat with almost no understories, really open forest. And you know, with invasives coming into our forest systems, we're seeing less of that kind of open understory forests. So that's partially driving decline, as well as a number of other factors like, you know, insect declines and stuff. But yeah, overall we are seeing a decline, and the fact that they're not seeing them at their property might be a reflection of that.
No, a whippoorwill. All birds, they nest different ways, but whippoorwills are actually they nest on the ground.
They
right?
do, yes.
So that's a species of bird that, even though they like to be in the heavy canopy forest, they're on the ground.
Yes.
it seems like that would make them pretty susceptible to predation.
It can, and if you look at their nests, they're often really camouflaged. The eggs are very, hard to find. If you're out there looking for them, you have a really tough time finding them.
Okay, all right. Next question here is about snakes. Patrick Berry wants to know how many venomous snake species are found in Kentucky?
We have 4 kinds of venomous snakes. The copperhead is just about statewide. It's not common in the bluegrass, but they're probably in every county, even though we have some bluegrass counties with no records like Scott, Bourbon, those counties. But the timber rattlesnake is nearly statewide, but absent from the bluegrass. Then we have the cottonmouth, or true water moccasin, which is in swamps in western Kentucky only, and it's fairly rare in the state. And then the pygmy rattlesnake, which is known from just 2 counties, Trigg and Callaway, and it seems to have disappeared from Trigg. We haven't had a record there since the year 2000. So Southeast Callaway is about the only place that still has pig, and has all 4 species, by the way.
Okay.
So if you want to live among venomous snakes, move to New Concord and Callaway County.
Callaway County.
That's the
where you
place
wanna
to
be.
go.
And if you don't want to be around snakes, I'll never forget, a couple years ago you told me that there was a county that had never had a record of a venomous snake. That's not to say they're not there.
Yeah, Scott, Bourbon,
I think you
Spencer,
said Shelby or 2.
Shelby, yeah.
Okay. Never had a venomous snake record.
Now they may be there, but we need a photograph of one to confirm that they're there.
So those are your counties right there. Scott, Shelby, Spencer. Remember, it starts with an S. It has no snakes. And not here in Kentucky.
Yeah. Oh, there are a couple more. Grant's another one.
Yeah. So. Okay. Very interesting. It's really wild how little changes can mean there's 0 snakes, and then you have such the huge population of copperheads are very common in Kentucky, aren't they?
Scott County has plenty of snakes. It's just none of them are venomous.
Venomous, not venomous snakes. Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Next.
Don't feel cheated if you live in Scott County.
The snakes are there, huh?
Yeah.
Nathan Rowe here wants to know, is the monarch butterfly now endangered? I've heard that it was, but I've also heard that it's not. So give me the update on the monarch butterfly.
Yeah, so that has been probably one of the most common questions I've gotten over the last month. The confusion there between the monarch butterfly being endangered or not, it is actually not federally endangered. So there's not been a change in the United States federal listing status of the monarch butterfly. Where this confusion is coming from is that the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, so that's kind of an international organization, and they kind of keep what's called the IUCN Red List, and on that red list, the monarch has now been listed as endangered. And so that is something that is used to look at species all over the world. So there's kind of a whole slew of biodiversity, and this ranking system ranks how these species are doing. So that organization has looked at the data as far as the monarch butterfly goes, and also keeping in mind that they're only talking about the eastern monarch butterfly in the U.S., the one that migrates, because western monarchs only migrate to California, so they don't make as large of a migration. But there's also another just general ranking for the monarch butterfly that is the global monarch butterfly for the IUCN Red List, and that has not been changed to endangered. So not the general monarch butterfly, not the monarch butterfly as far as our federal listing, but only on the IUCN Red List is the monarch butterfly endangered.
I can see how Nathan was confused. So.
Yes.
All right, next question is from Brandon Williams. Hey, this is an interesting question. The question is about what is the difference between a hellbender and a mud puppy? And interestingly enough, we spent the day, three of us here was in the field yesterday doing something really cool here in Kentucky that pertained to the hellbender. Tell us, first off, what is a hellbender and a mud puppy?
Well, a hellbender is a large aquatic salamander, and you have a model right there showing what one looks like.
I don't know if I can get this out of here or not. Without,
it's a very large wrinkly salamander that lives on the bottom of a river or stream, usually hiding under rocks or in crevices. And these hellbenders get good size, like 27, 28 inches, no external gills, a really flat head, wrinkles, folds along the side. A mud puppy is smaller. It has tight-fitting, smooth skin. It has external red gills, which come out just on the neck there. It's much more common, and it's considerably smaller than a hellbender.
These are really cool animals. And interestingly enough, Kentucky Wild is helping to fund a project that's taking place here in Kentucky. And yesterday, what did we do, Michaela?
We were actually out releasing 25 hellbenders into a creek. So we did kind of our first hellbender release as part of this program that's been going on for over 4 years now. We are collecting eggs from populations of hellbenders that we are aware of in the state, which isn't very many. And then those are getting reared up by some of our partners into kind of not fully adult hellbenders, but close to. Hellbenders take 5 to 6, sometimes more years to reach full maturity, but we're putting kind of, more than just these eggs, we're putting hellbenders that are about this big, 5 or 6 inches long, back out into some of these areas where we're hoping that they will kind of bump up the population of hellbenders.
Really cool species, because people who have spent their life flipping over rocks and creeks and streams may have never seen one.
Yes.
I've never seen one in the wild until yesterday when we released them. And it was a really cool experience to go out to return 25 of these back into a creek. And this is an ongoing project. It's going to take place over several years, right?
Yes.
Working with Purdue University. We filmed the whole thing. It's going to be a segment on Kentucky Afield. So if you're interested in learning more about these really cool aquatic salamanders, make sure you tune into Kentucky Afield here in a few weeks, and you'll see us putting some of these back. But what a cool project. This is a very long-lived salamander, is it not? How many years can these things last in the wild?
They can live up to 30 years.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. Think about something like that living under a rock. This is the perfect time to talk about what you brought here. You actually have a salamander with you there. Tell us what you've got.
Well, this guy is this is our largest terrestrial salamander.
Okay.
And this is an eastern tiger salamander. These guys are found in western Kentucky from about Shelbyville west. And a really big one might be 10, 11 inches long.
Okay.
They live underground.
Okay.
They come out in the spring, and they travel to usually a farm pond where they court and they lay their eggs. Then they go right back to the burrow they came out of and go back underground, and you don't see them again until the next year.
Wow.
But they do sometimes come out and wander around on rainy nights.
What do they feed on primarily?
They feed on grasshoppers, crickets, grubs, earthworms, any kind of insect, spider, anything smaller than they are. They will eat small snakes. They will eat baby mice.
So they're pretty slow species. It looks like they probably use their camouflage and ambush. Is that how they?
Well, they live underground in burrows.
Okay.
And, so they have pretty bright colors for a salamander, and that's kind of a warning color because they do have skin secretions that are very bad tasting to a predator.
Okay.
So hardly anything will eat one of these.
Okay.
A garter snake will eat one, or a hognose snake, or maybe a mud snake, and that's about it.
Okay.
So most predators just can't handle this. But this guy is less than 2 years old.
Okay.
He was a larva in a drying pond out in Christian County and was rescued by a friend of mine, and so he gave me the larva and I raised it. And so this
So you've
guy,
had it for 2 years. How long do this species live?
these have lived in captivity for 50 years. So,
Wow.
like in a zoo. So, and I'm not going to live 50 years, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Well,
I'm hoping I can talk the Salado Center into keeping tiger salamanders.
it's really cool. Now, does this particular species, will it lose its tail and regrow its tail if needed?
Not very well. They can regenerate their tails a little bit.
Okay.
But most of our salamanders, if they lose their tail, a new one starts growing right away.
Okay.
But
It's kind of a thick-bodied salamander, isn't it?
Yeah, this is in the mole salamander group. And these salamanders have lungs. And most of the salamanders that live in Kentucky that you find in the woods or along creeks are lungless salamanders.
Okay.
It's a whole family that they have no lungs. So if you can sit down and go, you can do something that a lungless salamander will never be able to do. So,
well, that's cool. Thank you for bringing that and sharing it.
So when their wives get exasperated, they can't just go.
I'm sure if that's a male, he's probably very happy for that fact.
Yeah. Actually, I think this is a male, but we're not going to get into that.
All right, next question is from Brad Hardesty. Thanks for bringing that, John. What species of tree frogs are in Kentucky, and how can I attract more tree frogs to their property?
We have a number of tree frog species. Bird-voiced, barking, green tree frog, and those are in western Kentucky. And we have the common one across the state is a Cope's gray tree frog, and they are everywhere, including in urban areas, and they can breed in rain gutters, rain barrels, swimming pools. But they normally lay eggs in ditches, road ruts, and they're even still breeding now. They'll call after a rain. If you want to attract them, you need a water source where they can lay eggs.
Okay.
They even breed in swimming pools, or wading pools. You need to have trees and shrubs that the adults can live in. They do pretty well everywhere. They're really common across the state.
Okay, so they're doing very well as far as...
They're doing really well.
Okay, very cool. So to attract them, you need a water source and some trees.
Yep.
All right. What should you do if you find a bat in your house? So we've talked about wanting to attract more bats. Now, if you actually get one in your house, what's the best way to handle that?
If you find a bat that's inside your house, the easiest way to try to get it out is just kind of like you would do with some other animals, opening the window. If you can shut the door, like if it's an enclosed room, you can shut the door to that room, open the window, turn the light off, just kind of leave it alone for a while. I've had luck with people just that have called me being able to do that, shutting the door and opening the window, and the bat will fly out. If the bat does not go anywhere, the most important thing to remember with bats in your house is don't grab them or don't just touch them with your bare hands or pick them up. It's rare, but there is that risk of rabies there. So if you can get kind of a cardboard box, slide it, put it over the bat, slide cardboard under it, take it outside that way. Make sure you're wearing gloves just, on the off chance that something happens, but a way that you can kind of, indirectly handle the bat and put it outside. Once you get it outside, if there's anywhere like a higher porch or something that you have, or a tree, obviously without handling it, that you can put the bat on so it can fly off. It's a little bit hard for them to take off from the ground, so people will put them on the ground and then they'll have trouble taking off, and then they'll get really worried that there's something wrong with the bat or that it's sick and it needs to go to a rehabber. It's usually just because it needs that little bit of a higher area so that it can take off from.
Okay, all right. There you go. So you want to close off other areas of the house. What about, I don't know anything about bats, but if I had a bat that got into a room of the house, I know that they come out at dark. If you opened up a window and turned on lights, would that maybe try to push it away, or would that not affect it at all?
Like with the light on instead of off?
Yeah, light on inside the room to try to make it a unsuitable area for that bat.
Yeah, it possibly could. I don't know. I've had people do it kind of the opposite, where it's been during the day, and the bat has either managed to fly out during the day, or they would fly out kind of once it becomes dark. But yeah, that could be an option, is trying to just a little bit of disturbance to where they're no longer comfortable in that room.
Without touching and handling, try to
definitely turn the ceiling fan off though if you have one of those, because when they get stressed, they'll kind of circle around similar to a ceiling fan. People will find that, they'll look at a bat circling and they'll think, oh my gosh, it's threatening me, but the bat's also stressed and just circling the room trying to find an exit. So turn off the fan so that it's not going to bump into it.
And get your video camera out.
Don't run into the center of the room, because the bat will be swooping back and forth. Stay along the wall.
Oh, there you go. There you go. There's how you get it done right there. Next question is from Jay Coates. Are barn owls showing better numbers in the state? So barn owls is something we've had a program going on for a couple years, and this happens to be a year where we're trying to gather some information on barn owls. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. This is our year of the triennial barn owl survey. So we go statewide and we try to inventory the entire population of barn owls throughout Kentucky. And throughout the state, they are doing much better than they have been historically. We actually have been tracking their progress with these surveys, and the number of nesting pairs and even just lone individuals is increasing year after year. And it's been a huge effort by the department. Initially, when we found a pair of barn owls, that maybe were nesting in a precarious spot, we would be putting up nest boxes for them. And over the years, we've put up over 200 nest boxes just to try to create more habitat for them to be safely nesting, to produce more young, to increase that population even further. So now we go out and we check those nest boxes, and I actually brought my little camera here, so we go in those nest boxes and we can stick this camera up there on a painter's pole, and we have another little monitor that we use, and we can, pretty easily just kind of peek inside that nest box, count all the chicks, kind of see how old they are, and it's very minimally invasive. We don't stress it a lot more than we have to get those numbers. And then, we can come back later, and if the chicks are old enough, we'll put leg bands on them. These little aluminum bands. Each one has a unique number on it, just like the Monarch tags did. So if we find that bird later, we can see where it came from, get an idea of how old it is, look at the survival of the just individuals of the species throughout Kentucky.
Barn owls look much different. You're not going to confuse a barn owl with other owl species here in the state of Kentucky. They look very, very different than other owls. Tell me a little bit about if you see an owl that has what characteristics as barn owls. Their face looks totally different, doesn't it?
So barn owls have a very heart-shaped face, very white face usually as well. They're often very white or kind of like a buffy, tannish brown color. And we think of owls, we think of like great horned owls and barred owls, which will hoot at night. Barn owls don't hoot. They kind of just have this kind of shrieky scream to them. It's very unnerving if you're just out in the dark and you hear it.
Hell yeah.
And we're actively looking for them. So if folks have them nesting, in a barn at their house or in an old grain silo that they don't use anymore, please give us a call, email the department, let us know. We'd love to come, just check up on them.
So you can reach the department by calling 1-800-858-1549 and let someone know, hey, I'd like to talk to someone about a barn owl. I think I have one, and they'll get in contact with you guys,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you said we put out 200 nest boxes for barn owls. What percentage of those are being used?
I don't have the exact number in my head. Most of them that we've checked this year, more often than not, seem to be occupied or have been occupied. We can go up there, we can look in the box, and there's those pellets that the owls produce. So if someone's been roosting in there, if they didn't lay eggs and have a family at least, so that's been very successful for the most part.
Yeah, so if there's a barn owl there, it's very hard for them to hide their activity because they're pretty messy, aren't they?
They are, yeah. If you have one around your barn, you'll know if there'll be little, grayish brown pellets everywhere.
What do you call those pellets? The pellets are kind of, it's whatever they couldn't digest, they literally cough them back up.
Yes.
And that pellet is exactly how you tell if you got a barn owl, right? If you got a couple of those, there's been a barn owl there.
Yeah, just matted fur and full of bones, and that's a barn owl.
Very, very cool. All right, next question we have is about bald eagles. Ryan Wermeling wants to know how the bald eagle numbers are doing across the state.
Once again, bald eagles are doing great. We have a survey, both nesting and a wintering survey. I actually brought a few figures because everyone loves graphs. These are the wintering bald eagle population numbers going all the way back from 1961, and you can just see how much better they're doing throughout the state. So it's just been a pretty steady uphill climb in the population. And then we're actually seeing it kind of taper off a little bit.
Okay.
Kind of hit that carrying capacity, like we call it. There's just not habitat for more birds. So they're doing really, really well, especially, after DDT was banned. We could just see that population skyrocket. And then we also do an occupied nesting survey every year. It's the same thing. We're seeing more and more nesting pairs every year throughout the state. So,
Man, I tell you what, it seems like I've seen owls in about every county I've been in. Not owls, bald eagles in about every county I've been in.
They're statewide. They are all over the place. And they're, like I said, doing wonderful.
It's amazing how they are doing. And it's still, even though you see them quite frequently now, it's still a really cool sight every time you look up and you see a bald eagle. It's such a beautiful bird.
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely.
All right, our next question is from Steve Consley. Wants to know, what is the state's rarest mammal? Rarest but not extinct. What's the state's rarest mammal? And don't say Bigfoot.
I won't say that. I would say it would be the rock shrew or the long-tailed shrew, which is a tiny little shrew with a really long tail that's only known from areas along the north side of Pine Mountain in southeastern Kentucky.
Okay.
So just known from a few locations. And
what do they look like?
They look like any other long-tailed shrew. They're kind of dark gray with a pointy snout and a long tail. They live in boulder talus.
Okay.
So places on the north side of Pine Mountain where the rock is cracked off and formed these, we call them boulder fields, with big trees growing out of them, and that's the kind of place where you find long-tailed shrews.
John, I know you've been a herpetologist here in the state of Kentucky for many years. Is there a particular animal species you're like, man, I've spent a lot of time looking for it. Before my career's over, there's one particular species that may have eluded you that you want to get your hands on in the wild?
My nemesis is the scarlet snake. It's
The scarlet snake.
It's a small red, black, and white snake with a pearly white belly. I found dead ones, but I've never found a live one.
Okay. And that's for you, for a person who's out looking for snakes quite frequently.
I've been looking for scarlet snakes since I was in high school. And,
really. So if someone gets a scarlet snake and gets a photo of it, you probably want to know about it, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. We got a photo of one last year that was in a swimming pool in northern Christian County, and I'm thinking, if only I'd moved to Christian County and bought that house, I could have found a scarlet snake in my swimming pool.
John Mcgregor's nemesis is the scarlet snake.
Yeah, people find them at Land Between the Lakes, driving the roads at night, but when I drive the roads at night at Land Between the Lakes, I find copperheads. So I like copperheads, but they're not scarlet snakes.
Yeah, you've probably seen thousands of those in your career. You want to see a scarlet snake. Hopefully we can make that happen. We'll find one of these days. The next person, Robert Howells, wants to know what happened to the number of nighthawks in Kentucky.
So nighthawks are nightjars, just like our common whippoorwills or chuckwills, widows, and they're experiencing a decline as well. They're still fairly common. If you go to like a parking lot at night, you can see them flying around those big lights, eating insects. So all over the world, we're seeing declines in insects, and following that, we're seeing declines in most birds that eat insects. So nighthawks are following that same trend where they're just slightly declining.
Okay, all right. Courtney Hayes, what do non-migratory butterfly species do during the winter, and where do they go?
So our non-migratory butterfly species are generally going to spend the winter either as a caterpillar or a chrysalis.
Okay.
And so if you think about, of course, something like the monarch or a painted lady, some of our other migrating butterflies, they're headed to either Mexico, Florida, South Texas, that sort of thing. The viceroy, that's really similar to the monarch, a lot of people get them confused, it will actually spend the winter as either a first or second instar caterpillar, so basically their first life stage as a caterpillar or their next one after they've molted, and they will roll up in a leaf, and that is how they will spend the winter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they feed on willow trees, so it's usually going to be a leaf of their host plant that they're going to be rolled up in. So that's kind of one of those things where people will say, oh, leave the leaves or leave some of the leaves in your yard over winter. Like everybody kind of wants to get in their garden and clean things up and bag up the leaves. But if you can kind of leave some of that area, kind of like Michael was talking about earlier with some of the dead grasses and stalks, that's really good for a lot of our insects that might be overwintering in that garden that aren't migrating south.
I'll tell you what, if you like the topic of tonight's show, we're talking all about the animal and fish species that we don't specifically go hunt, trap, or fish for, then this show's for you. This is what Kentucky Wild was generated for, to put more emphasis and more focus on these particular species. So that's why Kentucky Wild was generated. It's a way for you to buy that annual license to know that those dollars are going to help these particular animal species. So if you're interested in this type of thing, make sure you get you an annual membership to Kentucky Wild, and that membership is right now on sale for $35 for a limited time. And if you do that, you will actually get a t-shirt just like this one here Michaela's wearing. You can see that we've also got, Michael's got last year or a couple years shirt on. You got one that I haven't even seen out yet that I think these are available at the State Fair right now. This particular t-shirt, and or you can get these hats that are also produced by Country Boy Brewery, and this is the Kentucky Wild hats. These just came out this week. I think they're also available at the State Fair, or you can go at fw.ky.gov/KY-Wild. All right, let's get back to our questions here. Jonathan Carroll, can you tell the difference in a venomous and non-venomous snake by the way they swim? I've heard this a million times about head high or head not high.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Our venomous snakes are heavier bodied and they're more buoyant, so they tend to ride up in the water, and they tend to hold their heads up out of the water.
Okay.
But not always. I mean, a rat snake or a racer will also hold its head up out of the water.
So don't go grab a snake because it's right on the
And if with water snakes, they usually swim with their head right on the surface. Well, a cottonmouth or a copperhead or rattlesnake will have maybe that much neck up out of the water, but not always. And copperheads and cottonmouths will sometimes swim right on the surface or even dive. So,
okay. So you want to make sure that you don't use that as your tool, whether or not you're going to try to pick one up or grab them.
Be sure you know what it is before you grab it. I like to grab water snakes and get bitten by them, but not everybody enjoys that.
Yeah, I've seen they can be pretty aggressive. Water snakes are aggressive. You grab one, it's probably going to bite you, isn't it?
That's not being aggressive. That's defending yourself.
Well, yeah, but
if we have a stand your ground law that water snakes follow.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, they stand their ground. You grab one, they're going to stand their ground. All right, next question is Shane Young. How common are the eastern Hercules beetle in Kentucky, and how can you find them? I don't even know what this is, so who knows anything about this?
It's a large green, the males are greenish. They're about that big, and they've got horns on them. They're really neat. I think it's our largest scarab beetle, and they're pretty common, but you just don't ever see them. I find the grubs are, if you find a grub that's as big around as your little finger, inside, in the ground at the base of a rotten log or right under a rotten log, that's going to be a Hercules beetle grub. I suppose you could raise your own.
I have seen these before. I didn't know what that was called, but they're pretty good size, and they've got the horns, and they're kind of green with black dots on the back sometimes.
Yeah, the females don't have the horns.
Oh, okay, okay.
But the males battle each other for the love of a woman.
Okay.
We've caught them in bat mist nets before.
Really?
Stretching out a net in a forest corridor or over a stream. We've caught, the beetle in the net and then have to untangle it from there. So that's, not super practical for everybody looking for them, but that's one way that we've seen them before.
The places I've seen them tend to be at a house that people don't live at all the time, on the lake. The lights on, and they hit the screen, and they're on the screen doors where I've seen them a couple times.
Yeah, they come to street lights. One of my worst experiences was at Cumberland Falls, and I was walking around the parking lot photographing insects, and a big Hercules beetle hit the street light and landed just 10 feet away from me. And this guy steps out of his car, and he just takes his foot and plong, just smashed it. I was furious.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a beautiful
It is a
that
really, really cool looking beetle. Now that I know what what it is, I didn't know that's what they were called. Next question, Brian Jenkins: are certain venomous snake bites worse than others, or are they all the same? And I guess let's kind of keep it to the Kentucky venomous snake.
They are not all the same. And I have researched deaths from snake bite in Kentucky, and since 1960 there have been 6.
Okay.
All of them have been timber rattlesnakes. All of them have been in snake handling churches during services. So we have not had, in at least 50 years, we've not had a death from a wild venomous snake bite in the state. We've never had a copperhead death in Kentucky from snake bite or a cottonmouth. And a pygmy rattlesnake bite is probably about similar to a copperhead. It's going to be extremely painful. There's going to be swelling. There may be tissue damage. Seek medical attention, but you're not going to die from a copperhead or pygmy rattlesnake bite.
Everyone's heard the term dry bite. Does that exist? And you don't want to take a chance on that, right?
No, you don't. But a snake's venom is to get food. It affects birds and mammals, and it breaks down their tissue. So. But most venomous snakes, if they have an irritated, let go of me, they will deliver often a dry bite. They don't want to waste the venom on something they can't eat, because then when a squirrel comes along or a mouse, they might not have enough venom to kill it. So about half the bites are dry bites, unless you're really tormenting the snake. If you injure the snake or you cut its head off and the head bites you, it's going to pump every fluid ounce of venom it has right into you. So,
so don't take a chance on being that 50% that got a dry bite. Seek medical attention, right?
And if you're walking around at night, in the woods, carry a flashlight, watch where you step, don't wear flip-flops, don't go barefooted.
Yeah. All right, there you go. You heard it. Next question from Kristen Barnett. What is each of the panelists' favorite animal in the state? All right, we're going to start down there. You got to tell us, what's your favorite animal in the state?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Right now, I probably would have to say the golden-winged warbler. We have a project in Eastern Kentucky right now, kind of tracking them, trying to figure out what's going on with their population. So they're just taking up a lot of my brain space right now.
Okay. Well, and that's an animal species that you get to work with.
It is, yeah.
So, as a wildlife biologist, we just asked John. You know, you're kind of newer in your career, and is there an animal species that you would say, man, before my career is over, I would like to work with what species?
Oh, that's a great question as well. I have a fond place in my heart for the yellow-billed cuckoo. I'd love to do something with them.
Okay.
They're actually going to be listed in the State Wildlife Action Plan revision as a species of greatest conservation need. So they're declining. So we'd like to know what's happening with their population. So hopefully in the future I will get to work with them. And
okay. And what species is that?
It's
again?
a yellow-billed cuckoo.
Okay.
They're a pretty large songbird. They're about like 150 grams, so they get pretty big. Really bright white tails that has this kind of laddering pattern in it. They're very beautiful if you ever see them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Michaela, what's your favorite animal species, and what species do you want to work with before you retire?
My favorite animal species. Wow. Okay, so I think my favorite animal species, other than, of course, the monarch, I really like the big-eared bats that we have in Kentucky. I mean, they've just got these huge ears. There's the Virginia big-eared bat, the Rafinesque big-eared bat. They are really fascinating to me. I've worked with this species a little bit as far as the species that I would like to work with. They're just not nearly as common anymore. It's the northern long-eared bat. And John would probably laugh at this because, they used to be extremely common and all over the place, and their numbers are just, much further down than they used to be. But that is one species that I hope to do a little bit more work with and just kind of see on the landscape or in caves a little bit more, because we really just don't see them nearly as often.
All right. Well, we know that you want to hold a scarlet snake. Tell me what your favorite animal species.
My favorite animal is the copperhead.
Okay.
I love the coloration. No two of them look alike. They blend in with the forest floor. They eat anything.
Yeah.
Cicadas, caterpillars, moths, mice, other snakes, anything. They're just great snakes.
Very cool.
And it makes my day anytime I find a copperhead.
When is the next big hatch of cicadas coming? Because I know the copperheads. I've seen that they do eat on cicadas. When is the next?
What they eat, the copperheads eat the annual cicadas,
Okay.
the ones that are singing now.
Okay.
That the nymphs come out of the ground usually in July and August. The periodical cicadas that come out by the billions, they come out in May. And the copperheads aren't really tuned to those.
Okay.
Because they're every 13 years or every 17 years. So
When is our next big here in Kentucky?
I'm thinking it's a year after next, but I'm not. It depends on what part of the state you're in.
Okay.
Like this year, it was we had a big cicada emergence along the Ohio River from northern Kentucky to Louisville.
Okay.
I think in the bluegrass, it's going to be year after next. I'd have to look that up. It's
Okay.
all mapped out.
Okay.
So,
All right. And looks like this is going to be our last question here. It's from Stacy Perry. Wants to know what's the best part of our jobs. I mean, my job is so unique in the fact that, one day we're out here dealing with hellbenders, and then we're in a cave, and then we're turning over tins. We may be hunting or fishing. Tell you what, we're all pretty lucky. And you said something a while ago that I remember being in a cave. We went and looked at some caves somewhere in Carter County, I do believe. And I asked you the question, why bats? And you had gotten into wildlife biology, and I'm sure you've been picking up snakes since you were a little boy. I know you've told me stories about that. But you got into wildlife biology with no real plans to study bats, right?
That's correct.
You were not planning on working with bats, but there was a job opening. And lo and behold, now you're telling me your favorite animal species is a bat. The one species you want to work with before you retire is a bat. So that tells you, if you love animals and you want to learn more about animals, follow your passions and get involved in studying biology and do wildlife biology, because you never know. You might be that person up here 10 years from now saying snakes are your favorite species and you just want to be working with snakes. You just never know. You never would have thought 15 years ago you'd been saying, I want to work with bats for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
here you sit. So it's really amazing. So what's the best part about your job? Because you get to work with birds and raptors and things. That's really cool.
Yeah, honestly, the best part is just working with those birds, you know, going out there, banding chicks, capturing songbirds, and, you know, just doing all this different research that actually goes on and, you know, influences management to help, you know, conserve these birds. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of them are declining, and if we can do anything about that, that's the best part of my job, just trying to help them out.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I hope you learned something tonight. I know I did, and I always learn something here on these Kentucky Wild call-in shows. Hey, and if you're looking for a good reason to get outdoors, squirrel season is in right now, and dove season will be open on September the 1st, followed by deer archery season on September the 3rd. And remember, hunting and fishing on private property is a privilege. Always ask permission and thank the landowner. Until next week, I'm your host, Chad Miles, and I hope to see you in the woods or on the water.